Imagine walking into your favorite old-school diner, the kind with checkered floors and jukeboxes playing classic rock, only to see a scruffy old guy getting the cold shoulder from a waitress who's too busy scrolling her phone. But what if that nobody starts humming a riff that shakes the whole place awake? Stick around, because this tale of mistaken identity with rock legend Ozzy Osbourne will have you cheering for the underdog and blasting Black Sabbath on your way home. It was just another Tuesday morning in a small-town diner off the highway in Ohio, the kind of place where locals gather for bottomless coffee and greasy spoon breakfast that stick to your ribs. The air smelled like fresh pancakes and strong brew, with a hum of quiet chatter from truckers and retirees filling the booths. In walked this older fella, looking a bit rough around the edges with his messy hair, faded jeans, and a jacket that had seen better days, shuffling to a corner booth like he owned the joint but without drawing any eyes. The waitress, let's call her Jenny, was in her mid-30s, juggling a double shift after a rough night arguing with her boyfriend about bills piling up at home. She glanced at the old man, figuring him for just another drifter passing through, maybe short on cash or looking for a handout, so she took her sweet time wandering over, menu in hand but eyes glued to her phone. "What'll it be?" she muttered without looking up. Already assuming he'd order the cheapest thing or complain about the prices, her tone sharp like she'd had enough of folks wasting her time. The old man smiled faintly, his voice gravelly, but polite as he asked for black coffee and eggs over easy. No rush in his words, like he was used to being overlooked in life. Jenny scribbled it down half-heartedly, spilling a bit of water on the table without apologizing, then turned away to chat with the cook about weekend plans, leaving the guy to stare out the window at the passing cars. Little did she know, this wasn't some random senior. This was Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness himself, taking a break from his tour bus after a late-night gig in Cleveland, craving a taste of normalcy away from the spotlight. Ozzy had always loved these hidden gems, places where no one recognized him under the disguise of everyday clothes, a far cry from the screaming crowds and flashing lights of arenas. Back in his Black Sabbath days, he'd escaped the madness by hitting up diners like this, munching on simple food while dreaming up lyrics that would change rock forever. Today, he was nursing a headache from the road, humming softly to himself to shake off the blues, but Jenny's indifference started to grate on him, reminding him of his tough upbringing in Birmingham, England, where folks judged you by your looks before giving you a chance. As minutes ticked by, other customers got their orders promptly. A family with kids laughing over waffles, a businessman typing away on his laptop with fresh toast. But Ozzy's booth stayed empty except for the water glass. He tapped his fingers on the table, the rhythm unconsciously falling into the iconic beat of Iron Man, that heavy riff echoing in his mind from decades ago. Jenny finally brought the coffee, lukewarm at best, slamming it down with a sigh. "That'll be $2, she said, already walking away, not even offering cream or sugar like she did for regulars. Ozzy chuckled to himself, sipping the bitter brew, thinking about how fame changes everything yet nothing at all. People still see what they want to see. He remembered his early struggles, working in a slaughterhouse to make ends meet before Black Sabbath blew up, facing rejection from labels who called their sound too dark. This moment felt familiar, a test of patience in a world quick to dismiss the unconventional. And as he waited for his eggs, the humming grew a tad louder, drawing a curious glance from a nearby trucker who paused mid-bite. The diner had that classic Americana vibe, with posters of old cars on the walls and a jukebox stocked with hits from the 70s and 80s, including a few Sabbath tracks that no one played anymore. Ozzy's mind wandered to Sharon, his rock of a wife back on the bus, probably wondering why he insisted on these solo adventures. She'd always say, "Uz, you're a legend, but you act like a regular bloke," and he'd laugh, loving the anonymity that let him feel human again. Jenny, meanwhile, was venting to her coworker about that weird old guy in the corner, assuming he was harmless but annoying, her stress from low tips bubbling over into rudeness. She didn't know that Ozzy had sold millions of albums, headlined festivals, and even bitten the head off a bat on stage, stories that would make her jaw drop if she only paid attention. As the morning rush picked up, more folks filed in, and Ozzy's order got pushed back further, his humming turning into a soft vocalization of the lyrics, "I'm Iron Man," under his breath. The trucker nearby perked up, tilting his head like he recognized the tune but couldn't place the voice. while a couple in the next booth whispered about the eccentric senior making noise. Ozzy didn't mind. He'd faced worse crowds in his youth, booed off stages before proving his worth. This diner detour was meant to be relaxing, but Jenny's snub was turning it into a quiet standoff, her occasional glares from behind the counter missing the twinkle in his eye that screamed rock royalty. Expanding on Ozzy's backstory, he grew up poor, one of 6 kids in a working-class family, dreaming of music as an escape from factory life. Black Sabbath formed in 1968, blending blues with heavy metal, creating anthems like Paranoid that spoke to the disillusioned youth of the era. Ozzy's wild persona, drugs, antics, and raw energy made him infamous, but beneath it, he was a family man who battled addictions and health issues, always bouncing back with Sharon's support. In the diner, time stretched as Jenny served everyone else, her phone buzzing with texts from friends about weekend concerts, ironically including a Sabbath tribute band. Ozzy's patience wore thin, but instead of complaining, he amped up the hum, the riff of Iron Man filling his corner like a personal soundtrack. A young kid at the family table started bobbing his head, sensing something cool, while his parents shushed him, oblivious to the legend mere feet away. Jenny, finally plating the eggs, overcooked and cold, dropped them off with a curt enjoy, rolling her eyes as she turned. Ozzy thanked her anyway, his British accent slipping through, but she didn't notice, too wrapped up in her own world. As he poked at the food, the humming persisted, drawing more subtle attention, setting the stage for what was about to unfold in this unassuming spot. The diner's owner, an older gent named Bob who'd run the place for 30 years, was in the back office, unaware of the brewing scene. Bob was a classic rock fan himself, with Sabbath posters in his home den, but he'd never dream a star like Ozzy would grace his greasy counter. Meanwhile, Ozzy reflected on his solo career post-Sabbath, hits like Crazy Train that kept him relevant through the 80s and beyond, even reality TV fame with the Osbournes that humanized his chaotic life. As the humming grew, a waitress from the other shift, a fan named Lisa, clocked in and overheard the tune, her eyes widening in suspicion. But Jenny dismissed it. Just some old-timer trying to be funny, she said, missing the opportunity to turn her day around. The chapter builds tension, with Ozzy's subtle performance hinting at his identity, engaging the audience with relatable themes of underestimation and hidden talents. Continuing the narrative, Ozzy's life had ups and downs, firing from Sabbath in 1979 due to substance issues, then solo success with albums like Blizzard of Oz. He married Sharon in 1982, who managed his career through thick and thin, including his Parkinson's diagnosis later in life. In the diner, these memories fueled his calm demeanor, turning ignorance into amusement rather than anger. The trucker finally spoke up. "Hey, that sounds like Black Sabbath," he said loudly, making Jenny pause mid-pour. Ozzy grinned but stayed silent, letting the moment simmer. More customers tuned in, the diner's atmosphere shifting from mundane to electric, as if a concert was about to break out in booth number 5. Jenny, sensing the change, huffed back to the counter, complaining about disruptive customers, her frustration peaking from a long week of minimum wage woes. Little did she know, this encounter could be the story of her lifetime, a brush with fame that teaches humility in the most unexpected ways. Ozzy's humming of Iron Man started low, but built like a storm, the heavy guitar riff imagined in everyone's ears as heads turned toward the corner booth. Jenny, wiping down the counter, shot him an annoyed look. "Sir, could you keep it down? We're trying to run a business here," she snapped, her voice carrying over the clatter of plates. But Ozzy just nodded politely, taking a bite of his cold eggs, his eyes twinkling with mischief as the melody continued, now with a bit of vocal growl that sounded eerily authentic. The trucker leaned over. "Man, you nail that Ozzy vibe. Ever seen Black Sabbath live?" he asked, chuckling, while the family nearby whispered excitedly, the kid pulling out his phone to play the real track for comparison. Jenny rolled her eyes, thinking it was all a coincidence, her mind on the lunch rush ahead and how she'd rather be anywhere else, dreaming of a better job in the city where tips flowed like rivers. Suddenly, Lisa, the other waitress, froze in her tracks, her face lighting up like she'd won the lottery. "Wait a minute, that voice, is that?" she stammered, pulling out her phone to Google recent Ozzy sightings, discovering his tour stop nearby. Rushing over, she asked Ozzy for a photo, and he obliged with a grin, removing his cap to reveal the iconic wild hair, confirming the impossible. The old man was the rock god himself. The diner erupted in gasps and cheers, phones whipping out to capture the moment as Jenny's face turned beet red, her earlier rudeness hitting her like a ton of bricks. "Oh my God, Mr. Osborne, I am so sorry. I had no idea," she blurted, hand shaking as she refilled his coffee properly this time, adding cream and sugar with apologies pouring out. Ozzy laughed it off. "No worries, love. Happens all the time. Keeps me grounded," he said in his thick accent, sharing stories of similar mix-ups from his globetrotting days. Word spread fast, with customers crowding around for autographs. The jukebox cranked to Iron Man as the place turned into an impromptu party. Bob the owner emerged from the back, jaw on the floor, offering free meals and snapping selfies, reminiscing about seeing Sabbath in '72. Jenny, mortified but learning a lesson, chatted with Ozzy about his music's impact on her parents' generation, realizing fame doesn't always scream for attention. Ozzy opened up about his journey from Birmingham factories to stadiums, crediting Sharon for saving his life multiple times through rehabs and comebacks. He tipped Jenny generously, enough to cover her bills for the month, turning her bad day into a blessing with words of encouragement. "Never judge a book by its cover. We're all just trying to get by." As the excitement peaked, Ozzy posed for group photos, humming more tunes that had everyone singing along, bridging generations in that little diner. The kid from the family got a signed napkin, vowing to start a band, while the trucker shared road stories that mirrored Ozzy's own nomadic life. Reflecting on themes of kindness and perception, Ozzy's visit reminded everyone that legends walk among us, often in disguise, teaching humility in everyday encounters. Jenny vowed to treat every customer better, her story becoming local lore shared over coffees for years. The chapter explores the aftermath, with Ozzy calling Sharon to recount the fun, her laughter echoing through the phone as she teased him about his incognito fails. Back on the bus later, he wrote notes for new songs inspired by the diner, proving creativity strikes in the humblest places. Expanding further, Ozzy's influence on metal, pioneering doom riffs that inspired bands like Metallica and Slayer, made his presence monumental. For the 25 to 65 audience, this ties into nostalgia for classic rock eras, evoking memories of vinyl records and concert ticket stub in drawers. As folks left the diner buzzing, Jenny's shift ended on a high, her boyfriend calling to hear the tale, strengthening their bond through the unexpected windfall.